Ozonics Killerwinds podcast, back again. Nick Simon, Cole Tanner, Nick Simon. That's who we are. Oh, you know what? Let's just jump right into it. We don't need to do, we don't have like a song intro, do we? We don't have a song intro?
Well, I put one in every episode.
Oh yeah, you do. Well, let's do a double song intro. Hey, welcome to the podcast. I've got a cold after Harrisburg. Woohoo! They call it the Harrisburg flu. Get it every year.
I know. I'm kind of feeling it today too a little bit.
You know, the funny thing is I don't know. Maybe it is Harrisburg flu. Maybe it's not. I feel fine. It's just my voice.
Yeah,
and I've got this cough thing going on.
Yeah, I feel totally fine.
Cough.
Yeah, I feel totally fine. But I just feel kind of congested a little bit.
Yeah, oh yeah.
A little coffee. Yep. Not as coffee as you, but
yeah. Part of it I do think is I as well think I felt like my voice is good all week, but man, towards the end it really fell off.
Yeah.
And now I'm just got this, I'm like an octave lower.
Yeah,
if
a little rasp. A little raspy.
A little raspy. So let's just jump right into it. So we're talking about something today. Here's what I'm going to say to start. This is all speculation. We're just having a conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, we've talked about politics a little bit here and there. Not that much though.
Not much at all, really.
No, I mean, we've talked about some of that stuff with like Jace, but that's not really politics.
Yeah.
That's just about like the Iowa DNR.
Mm-hmm.
But we have opinions about stuff, right? So first thing I'm going to say, and I've said this before, like I said, I graduated with in journalism and environmental studies degree, and I always remember that they always talked about just to be fair and balanced. I think that's really hard to do because we inherently all have our own opinions on things and our own perspectives, and that floods what we talk about, right? So, but with that said, we're going to try to just talk a little bit about some stuff that I've been hearing, and I don't know if it's really true or not. So I started digging in on the internet. I started calling a few people that I know and asking them, just asking just to see. And there's still a lot up in the air, it sounds like. So I'm being really cryptic about what we're talking about. So obviously Donald Trump got elected. I'll be the first to say I voted for him, right? You voted for him, if that's okay to say.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, you voted for him. A lot of people did. The majority of Americans did, right? Part of what I think is awesome about the United States of America is that it is a democracy. The idea is that we all have a choice, and we all have a vote, and we all have a voice. I think that's really important. I think we live in the greatest country in the world. If I had a bald eagle noise in here, I'd go, Caw! Like bald eagle. I don't know why I went like that, because bald eagle is way bigger than my hand.
Yeah.
But, so that's my thing to say before we start is I think that we live in an awesome country. And one of the best parts is that we can have debate. Mm-hmm. One of the best parts is there is the Democrats and the Republicans. There's libertarians. There's all sorts of different groups that have their way of thinking.
Right.
And I think that's what's awesome about the United States. I mean, we've all come here as immigrants at one point. It's a big melting pot of all these different types of people. I mean, like you have family members that have that Ancestry 21 thing or whatever it's called, right? Yeah,
my sister's got it.
Yeah, like all of a sudden you learn all these crazy things about where you came from. It's like, holy cow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So my point of all that is there's a lot happening right now since Trump has gotten elected. And one of the things that everybody's been hearing about is a lot of the cuts that he's making to a lot of different things. You hear a lot about, if you even watch the news at all or not, there's a lot of talk about this DOGE, right? Mm-hmm. Department of Government Efficiency, which is that Elon Musk and that Avaswamy, I'm saying his name wrong probably, but they're going through a lot of different things and they're making a lot of budget cuts.
Right.
The fact of the matter is that the United States has a $2 trillion+ deficit, right? If we were a business, we wouldn't even be solvent, right? We wouldn't make as much as we spend. Do you follow me? And so, like the payments just on our debt alone, like it's insane, right? You can get into that whole thing and go down that rabbit hole. But the point of this is that there's a lot being cut right now. And there's a lot of things in the news and the media. And what I was starting to hear, and again, just following things that I follow and just listening to different things and reading up on things, try to get on both sides of the aisle or the both sides of the media narrative, trying to find some sort of semblance of what's actually happening. And that's where I think a lot of this, just with the conversation we're going to have, is speculation. But I've heard rumblings about CRP going away, that may be a thing that's kind of like on the chopping block. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to go through some of the information that I found. Like I said, I don't know if it's 100% right or wrong. I would challenge you, if you're listening to this, to get on the internet and do your own research.
It's all public.
Yeah, see what you can come up with. I could be completely off. The people that I've talked to, I really trust. You know what I mean? But like you said, so there was a thing to kind of preface this. There was a thing during the election cycle that Donald Trump was like really they were really trying to pin him down on, which was this thing called Project 2025. Okay. So, and there was a lot of things in there that were probably good things, but then there's a lot of things that for a lot of people seem very radical, right? Things that they want to try to do to the country. And so Trump was like, I don't agree with that. I'm not endorsing Project 2025. It's basically this big, long document, like 300 some pages of all this stuff that they wanted to change. And Trump's like, I'm not a part of that. Well, the interesting thing is J.D. Vance was a part of it. He like wrote the foreword to it. Like he basically endo facto endorsed it. You know what I mean? Well, now that Trump has taken office, he's trying to make things better. He's trying to, you hear him talk about it, just common sense stuff, and trying to eliminate some of the waste and cut the budget down to help get rid of the deficit, right? As a country, as a business, like we got to keep everything moving. Like we got to, it's a slippery slope that we're kind of falling into. The debt over the last 10, 15 years just keeps getting more and more and more and more and more. Well, interestingly, if you look at some of the stuff with Project 2025 and you look at some of the stuff that Trump has done since he got office, there's a lot of mirroring going on. A lot of stuff is very close. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's people that were a part of Project 2025 that are getting looked at for leadership positions or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, it, as me being a little bit of a tin hatter, putting my conspiracy hat on, I'm like, well, that's kind of interesting. Well, so then I just went right through it. I started to read some of it, and you can see a part in Project 2025 that talks about eliminating CRP, right? And so we're going to try to talk about today just a little bit about like what CRP is. We're going to talk about some of the history that I understand about the program. And again, I don't know everything. I'll be the first to tell you that, so take that for what it's worth. I'm not an expert. This is just our opinion, my opinion. Nick's going to be doing a lot of nodding.
Yeah, I apologize.
No, you're good. So interesting, like CRP used to be called set aside. Okay. And the reason, and set aside goes back way, way back. CRP sounded like it became a thing really in like the mid 80s. I have like a note that I made. So I'm going to be kind of looking at that every once in a while.
That's fine.
Just to try to get my facts right. But yeah, like I said, the idea behind set aside way back in the day was to help kind of curb overproduction, right? Because the reality is that when it comes to farming, every single year, the technology just advances and evolves, and all of a sudden we can get more and more and more bushels per acre. The way that we farm the ground, the way that we grow the crops, the way that we harvest the crops, the way we store the crops, everything just keeps advancing and advancing. And so the idea behind set aside was to help kind of curb that overproduction. Because if you're not careful, overproduction turns into just what it sounds like. You have too much supply.
Right.
Then it becomes a supply and a demand issue, right? Well, supply and demand, if you have too much supply, guess what happens to the price? Price goes down, right? And so there are acres every year, way, way back, and even into CRP now that flood. If you've got areas along rivers and creeks, or you've got a wet spot in your field where this farmer is going out there and farming it every year after year after year, wasn't getting anything from it. So like, well, hey, let's call it set aside. Let's set these aside. But also with that said is it was trying to create some sort of balance. so that there wasn't overproduction. You follow me? And that program has evolved. Now it's turned into CRP, right? CRP, from what I understand, really kind of has like three basic ideas, right? So first part of and three kind of principles, which really boil down to what it comes down to is water quality, right? Trying to help water quality, trying to eliminate erosion, and then obviously wildlife in there, right? That's a big part of it too. And so CRP over the last however many decades, since the 80s, has really, really taken off. And it's become a huge part of this conservation movement across the country. Do you follow me? Right now, it sounds like there's about 27 million acres in CRP, okay? And so, every 4 years or every couple years, depending on who's in power, there's always this shift on how and what is being determined, or the regulations and the rules, the requirements. It's kind of constantly evolving and changing. So in the last how many years, we've had a lot of Democrats in there, Democrats are usually more kind of pro-conservation.
Right.
Republicans, for whatever reason, kind of seem more pro not conservation. You know what I mean? Not that they don't want to see everything go extinct, you know what I mean? But they're also, kind of more probably pro-farmer, you know what I mean? And not that farmers are bad, because we need farmers, right? We need conservation too.
Right.
There's got to be a balancing act. And so, but yeah, like you said, there's just a lot going on right now with, is some of this stuff going to go away? There has been a lot of government cuts, and those cuts are hitting the DNR too. It's hitting the USDA, which would be like NRCS, which creates these wetlands and creates these projects and creates this area that turns into CRP.
Right.
CRP, what it means to you and I as a hunter is walk-in areas, right? Some of the public lands that we hunt, where there's a piece of public ground, but then there's private around it that's CRP that's posted as public.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? That are walk-in areas, And so, it's just really, really interesting to see what's kind of happening. The people that I talk to, I'm just like, is it going to go away? And they're like, that's a really hard question to answer. You know what I mean? Before, it seemed like the answer would have always been no.
Yeah.
Now there's a lot up in the air. Even in the state of Iowa, there's a Doge committee in Iowa now. You know what I mean? Which probably it needs to be there, right? There's areas that there can be cuts. But then that's the other thing too, is if they are cutting, and they're they're cutting the Iowa DNR, they're cutting people. Who's doing those jobs? Who's doing those tasks, and who's taking on those responsibilities? Is it all of a sudden we go from 100 people down to 60 people, but still the same amount of work has to be done? Is that possible? I just hope that they're really doing their due diligence, not just not having it, like you said, just being like a big fire sale.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Some of the interesting stuff too about when it comes to CRP, because initially when I heard this and I started reading on the internet, again, there's always the extreme on each end. And maybe what I'm describing is the extreme on the one end. So you need to go and try to find the extreme on the other and decide where you fall in the middle of it. I'm trying to be as objective as I can.
Right.
What I found and what I heard is I don't know that CRP is going away tomorrow, but there is a lot more regulation, and there is a lot more things that are changing with how people even get into CRP, which it almost kind of feels like I said a minute ago, it's like death by 1,000 cuts, right? CRP in the past, there's general CRP and continuous CRP. A lot of guys get in these 10-year programs, right? Well, now the way it works is the farmer gets 85% of whatever the rental rate is. Well, it used to be if you were in the program, the next time you just could auto renew.
Right.
Well, now they're not allowing that auto renewal. Now there's a part in there as well that talks about what they call type 1 and type 2 soil, which, so if it has 15% above this type 1 or type 2 soil, then it's not eligible. Well, if you were already in, then you could get in again. Well, now if you're in and it has this type 1 or type 2 soil, it's above 15%, hey, guess what? You can't auto renew. Mm-hmm. And so now that land isn't eligible. Well, guess what all the state of Iowa is?
Yeah, type 1, type 2. Yeah.
So it's like, is it going to go away tomorrow? No. But does this mean it maybe goes away in 10, 15, 20 years? Yeah, probably. Now it sounds like, and from the research I did, there also is these like buffer strip, like programs, which is what I think of a lot of times when you think of like in North Central Iowa, there's lots of dredge ditches, there's lots of rivers, creeks. So they'll put buffer strips on each side, which is great because then when it floods, it's hopefully not flooding the farmer's field. You know what I mean? A lot of times those buffer strips are areas that weren't the greatest to farm anyway. Mm-hmm. You know, they'll have a wetland and they'll put buffer strips around that wetland.
Yeah.
And I don't know every little piece about that.
Yeah, it could be safety too.
Yes.
So you're not getting too close to it, you know.
Exactly.
Yada, yada.
Exactly. So there's good things with that too. So it doesn't sound like the buffer strip program is going to go away, but I think it's interesting because it's making it harder for these farmers to renew. From the research that I did, 80% of CRP is renewal. 20% is new. Mm-hmm. It's hard to get in. It's a complicated program. You know what I mean? If they're making the renewal harder, and then even with that, you know, it used to be it is a percentage of whatever the rental rate is. Well, they only want to do 85% of the rental rate. So then a farmer's already sacrificing because he could farm that and make 100 cents on the dollar. But now with CRP, he's only making 85 cents on the dollar. If you try to renew again, that will go down 10%. So now it's not 100 cents. Now it's only 75. Do you follow me?
Right.
So it's making it even harder for a farmer to want to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so, and all of this, so you understand, is really lumped into the Farm Bill. Okay. And the Farm Bill, like I said, I want to just make sure I have this all written down. The Farm Bill, what it really boils down to is the House Ag Committee, okay? Or that's a big part of it. And the Farm Bill is really kind of part one, part two. Part one is the farm part of it. Obviously, it's called the Farm Bill. But it really boils down to insurance and commodity payments, right? Which, like the average Iowan knows as subsidies, right? So farmers are subsidized. Wind turbines are subsidized. There's things that are subsidized. Could farming be like sustainable if it wasn't subsidized? Man, I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know the answer to that. I'm not an economist.
Yeah.
And do I know that farmers have got a tough job? And do I know that they just like hunting, you can't control the weather. So all of a sudden they're farming and then they have a massive flood. Well, we need crops to feed our country. So it's important, you know? So the Farm Bill really comes down to that insurance and those commodity payments. The conservation part really kind of is part two, but the conservation budget is like half of what this is, like all of it compared to that first part. Does that make sense? And so, you know, and then there's just a lot of other interests that want to be a part of this too, right? Like, you know, whatever it may be. And again, I'm not trying to throw shade on, like, that's a whole industry, whether it's tractors, whether it's seed, whether it's co-ops, whether it's whatever it might be, right? There's all these industries that they want to see more corn grown, right? There's the Iowa Corn Growers Association, right? Like that's a real thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or excuse me, the Iowa Corn Growers, right? They want to see more corn. They've been pretty outspoken that they're not really for CRP.
Yeah.
And so I'm just trying to give color and context. I don't know if I'm doing a good job of it or not.
Oh, it's fine.
There's a lot to it.
Yeah.
There's so much. And dude, there's so many details that I don't even really want to get into because I don't 100% understand it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But yeah, it's just really, really, really tricky. You know, and I think at the end of the day, I think what's a little disheartening is I feel like we all as Americans, and I feel like a lot of people voted, and you can see where we kind of swung. I think you and I really feel like sometimes when you watch the mainstream media, you just only hear one perspective.
Yeah.
And the reality is when you watch Fox News, you only hear one perspective on there too a lot of times.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
let's just be real. Like, It's a real thing. Whether you watch CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, you're getting one side. But what it really boils down to when it comes to all this CRP stuff, and what's a little disheartening, is really who's in power is the one that controls the truth and is the one that decides, right? Which I guess is what we do when we elect our government officials, right? Is we give them the power to make those decisions for us.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like complaining about something that I also said earlier, that I'm glad we live in this amazing country. But like you said, it's just a tricky thing because, again, all of a sudden when that power shifts, then the truth shifts. And what we all feel like we're hearing on TV is, man, we need to get rid of all this money we're giving to all these people. A lot of truth in that. And we need to lower the deficit. But also, if that starts affecting, all of a sudden now we cut out CRP or we cut out conservation programs, like there's consequences to that. You know what I mean? So we just have to have our eyes wide open. And I just hope that maybe this just gives a little context to some of that stuff.
Yeah.
And, at the end of the day, if you don't believe me or you do believe me or you're questioning me, research it, see what you can find out. Call the Iowa DNR, call or write a letter to your congressman. You know what I mean? Like that's part of being an American too, is you have the right. They're state of Iowa employees. Like we pay their salaries, you know what I mean? Like our taxpayer dollars. And I think at the end of the day, what this all boils down to for me, no matter what happens or how I feel about it, what it really means to me is that I think in the long run, even let's just say CRP stays as it is, when you start to research and just realize how hard it is to get into and or some of these regulations that's really bottlenecking some of that. I want to say one last thing too. The other thing that's interesting too, before I say what really, really bothers me most of all is when you talk about, we talked about earlier about that there's 27 million acres. Well, of that 27 million acres, a huge section of that is grasslands. Over 38% of it is just grasslands, which is made up of like 4 states, not Iowa.
Right.
Okay. So we're all 50 states are trying to, we're all trying to grab at all these 27 million acres. Well, if 38% is grasslands, that's 10 million acres. Okay. So now all of a sudden 27 turns into 17.
Right.
So now we're all grabbing it a lot less. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's the other thing too, is you start to look at grasslands versus wetlands. Just do a Google search on how many species live on wetlands and how many species live on grasslands, right? The reality of north central Iowa is we are wetlands. You think it's just this big flat, but 200 years ago, we've talked about this. It was tall grass prairie, bur oaks, and marshes, wetlands. You know what I mean? It was pothole country. The reality is if you look at a grassland, and I'm oversimplifying this, but it could be, let's just say 15 to 25 species on that grassland. But if you look at a wetland, it could be hundreds of species on the wetland, right? Like the biodiversity between the water out in the wetland and the switchgrass 200 yards off the edge, it's incredible. You know what I mean? Where just grassland it's just a different ecosystem. There's just less species. So all of a sudden when we start, that's what for me, when I start really looking at it, like I said, it kind of feels like a death from 1,000 cuts because like I said, so much of it is getting kind of pulled in by grasslands. And Iowa's not the only state that's doing this. All these other states, they want some of it too, and they deserve some of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But what really concerns me at the end of the day is that if we continue to eliminate these acres, we're going to see it affect wildlife populations. It's going to affect the resource. You're going to see pheasant populations go down right off the bat. I think if, let's just say hypothetically, and again, this is probably not going to happen. Maybe it will. They just cut CRP. Hey, all CRP done. We're nulling all contracts. I don't even know if they can do that, but let's just say they stop it all. Farmers aren't going to, let's say they decide they're just not going to renew contracts. That could be just as bad. Sounds like that could be happening right now. Just not renew contracts.
Yeah.
Okay. So all of a sudden farmers are like, well, I'm not going to let it sit there out of the goodness of my heart. I got to make a living. I got to put food on my table for my family. So what's he going to do? He's going to burn it. He's going to cut it down. He's going to plow it up. He's going to farm it. So initially hunters are probably going to be like, hey, this is awesome. Because the pheasants are just going to get even more, they're going to get concentrated. Right. You can't sustain a pheasant population on buffer strips. I don't think. You know what I mean? Like, and we're talking, where it also really affects is these walking areas we're describing. Hey, that awesome piece of ground that you've been hunting for the last how many years that's like got this really, really cool little stand or whatever, like we hunt out at Northwest Territories or behind the private or wherever it is, guess what? Starts to go away. You know what I mean? So pheasant population gets concentrated, and all of a sudden the pheasant population goes down.
Yeah.
Look at coyotes, for example. You know, what really scares me, not only just pheasants, but deer and turkeys. But I think, again, there's a predator-prey relationship out there. For example, coyotes. You've heard me say before, if there was a nuclear apocalypse, there's two things that are going to make it through. Coyotes and cockroaches. You just can't kill them. You can hunt them as hard as you want, and they'll just find a way.
Right.
So what is the majority that predators like coyotes eat? Mice in around wetlands and grasslands. Well, all of a sudden, if you start taking that away, coyotes are still going to eat. So what are they going to eat? They're going to start eating pheasants. What are they going to eat? You're going to see fawns, the fawn kill rate go up. Guess what they're going to eat? They're going to eat turkeys. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I just hope that this isn't a turning point. Like, I'm glad that Trump got elected. I voted for him. Like I said, I think what he's doing is great. And I think that we do need to figure out ways to cut back. You know what I mean? I just hope that there's a balance between just slashing and burning and, like he's been saying, common sense. Because at a certain point, I think conservation starts to suffer.
Yeah.
And, you know, I hope that this isn't a turning point that we get 15, 20 years down the road and go, man, remember when there used to be pheasants all over the place? Remember when that used to be a, you know, pretty awesome place to go hunt for deer? Remember when we used to have tons of turkeys out here?
Right. Yeah.
I hope that isn't what it turns into, because 15, 20 years from now, my son's sitting here. He's out there. He's the guy that's hunting. You know, my sons and my daughters. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And someday your kids too. Wherever Nick's wife is out there. Hey, how's it going? Hey, she could be listening. You never know. So anyway, now I'm even more hoarse than I was at the beginning.
It has just slowly gotten worse.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's way worse. So I don't know. Food for thought.
Yeah, definitely.
I hope at the end of the day, like I just said a minute ago, I hope that we find a happy medium. Like you said, like I said at the beginning, we live in the greatest country in the world, and it's awesome that we can have disagreements. And I think in the past, like it's been so like you're either one or the other, and there was no discussion in the middle.
Yeah.
And sometimes I get scared that, like, you know, I know as I've already said who I voted for. So with that said, I felt like the mainstream media was biased one way, and the other stations, Fox News, was biased another way. Well, now there's been a shift in power. Well, I hope that and they've talked about transparency, and that's all great. But I just hope that we hear both sides of it again, because that's what I think we have to get back to. Because if we don't hear both sides, I am afraid that the DNR and conservation in general is going to be what's going to fall to the wayside.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it's like a divorce. It's not the husband and wife that suffer, it's the kids. In this whole conservation thing, it is the people that work there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But what really suffers is the resource.
Right.
And I really like using the resource.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? So, I don't know.
Crazy times.
I'm going to get off my soapbox now. I'm crushing it right now. The soapbox, that is.
Just destroying it.
I don't even know where that saying came from. I'm going to stand on my soapbox. What does that even mean?
I don't know.
There was probably something that way back. What else was I going to say? Let me see here. Yeah, so I apologize if you didn't want to listen to something political today. I'm not trying to and again, the other thing I would say is I'm not trying to push an agenda. If it comes off that way, I'm really, really sorry.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to shed light on stuff that's happening. And it feels like this is happening really quickly.
Right.
And the other thing that's interesting is there's real people that are being affected by this, right? There's people that are losing their jobs. There's people that are going, man, there's a lot of uncertainty. I don't know if I'm going to have a job 6 months from now, you know? And so, like you said, I feel like there's more than just what we're seeing on the news. There's more to it. And I feel like, I don't know, hopefully that this just sheds some light. Like I said, I hope that we find a balance.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah. But be really, really interesting. And again, maybe part of it is that turkey season's right around the corner. Pretty excited about it.
Yeah, they can't come soon enough.
I want to keep seeing turkeys out there. Oh, yeah, that was one of the funny things on the, so I'm going to get off that. But again, if you stuck around the whole time, thanks for listening. I apologize if I sound like a crazy person. That wasn't the point. Nick's like, you sound like a crazy person.
No, not at all.
No,
I apologize for not saying anything. I don't have too much background knowledge on it, and I didn't want to just butt in. And
no, you're good,
you know,
man. No, I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Appreciate you listening.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing. Do you have the name of that call?
Yeah, Garrett Ridge.
Okay. So we were at the Harrisburg show, and Nick was on a mission. We didn't talk about this on the last one.
Yeah, we did.
We did?
Really briefly.
Okay. Let's well, there's been more detail now that we're back. So we just made the drive back from Harrisburg. We made it back good. It's always a little bit of a trick because you never know what the weather's going to do.
Yeah, so hit or miss.
Oh my goodness. Even on the way back, we're like, oh, we're making great time. This is awesome. We're watching the weather. And then North Iowa got just pounded the other day.
Yeah, right where we needed to go.
So I'm talking to Tatum and she's like, babe, the roads are bad. I'm like, gosh, dang. So he's just like, okay, I got to stop. Yeah. Like, oh, we'll go around. We'll go down. We'll go through Des Moines. We'll go a different way. Same thing. They got it even worse.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, so then we kind of slipped back into northern Iowa. And then the next day it just hit again.
Yeah.
So you just never know. But one of the things that was fun at the show that Nick was really excited about was getting a new turkey call.
Yep. New slate call.
But part of the stipulation is that he wanted me to help pick it out.
Yeah, because I'm not too confident with it yet. And so I didn't want to, make myself look dumb in front of the guy who's selling it. But I wanted just to make sure that like it actually did sound good. It was a sound that we're kind of looking for and stuff like that. And so we actually found it pretty quick.
Yeah, I was like, so.
I think it was the first one we tried. And then we tried a bunch more and we're like, that first one is by far the best.
Yeah. And again, it's personal preference.
Yeah.
A lot of those other guys in there are making great calls too. Mm-hmm. It's just the sound that you like. I've said it before. I like a real bright sound on a slate call. I like glass specifically. And I'll use a normal slate too, but like I like glass and I like a very bright, like full, warm sound.
Yeah.
That makes maybe you're like, what are you talking about? I don't like tingy, I don't like muffled.
Yeah.
I like bright.
Yeah.
I like the bright because then you can kind of do the whole thing. And if you want to go softer and duller, you can. But anyway, so, and I kind of like, I would never usually walk up to the turkey calls because I don't know. I don't know. I have enough slate calls and I know how I am.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like calls are like gloves to me. I just have way too many.
You could end up having 10 of them really quick if you were walking around the show trying to find more.
I know.
You know what I mean?
I know,
so it's like,
I know.
But in my position, I only have one slate call. I just bought it just cause,
So he's like, hey, come on. I'm like, all right. So I walked up. I'm like, hey, man. And we just got to talk. I'm like, what's your favorite one? And he just grabbed that one right away and played it. And I was like, Nick's, I think, like kind of looking at me like, oh, this is going to be bad. And I wasn't going to probably say anything in front of the guy, but right off the bat, it sounded awesome. I was like, man, that sounds pretty good. He's like, oh, thanks. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, I like make these all myself. I like cut the wood like behind my house. Like, It's like, really? Oh yeah, man. And so we got to talking for a while. He's from Ohio. What was his name again?
Garrett Ridge. Garrett, I can't remember his last name, but the call is called Garrett Ridge Custom Calls.
Okay, there you go. So if you're looking for a good call, definitely let's check out. So then I went around to a bunch of the other calls, and I just did the same kind of thing, just kind of do what I do and played them, whether it's right or wrong. I'm not like, no, I'm not a champion or anything. I just scratch on it, and it sounded the best, in my opinion. And so you ended up going back over there and you bought one.
Yeah.
Well, then, and I didn't mind you doing it, but then Nick did turkey practicing all the way back.
I did too.
For 2 days.
Just wore that sucker out.
Just really tried to light a fire on that thing, man.
Yeah, it was good though.
Literally, you could have put some little grass on there, and you probably could have started a campfire.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of starting to get the hang of it now. Seems like maybe a little bit, sort of.
Yeah.
It's getting there. But yeah, no, it was really fun, and I think it's a testament to the call that he made, just because it's, I could make it sound pretty good, and I'm not the best caller, but it felt easy for me to kind of make some sound out of it compared to other ones that I've tried. So yeah, I'm really happy with it, and I'm really excited.
Yeah, no, it's been pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like I said, and it's we kind of talked a lot about that. I feel like calling in general, whatever it might be, whether it's using an elk reed, you know what I mean, or mouth calling turkeys, or mouth calling an elk, or predator calling, or whatever it might be, using a slate call, box call, all that type of stuff. Kind of feels like riding a bike. First, you just have to get going.
Yeah.
You got the training wheels on. You should kind of figure out like the fundamentals of how to call.
Yeah.
And then you eventually take the training wheels off, and now you start to kind of go faster. You really, really learn how to balance and actually really, really ride the bike. And that's kind of where you're at now. You've got the foundation.
Yeah.
You know how to make a noise.
Yeah.
But now you're really kind of getting in more to the nuances of it.
Yeah, exactly.
And learn how to kind of go faster.
Yeah, exactly. I could never purr ever. Now I figured out how to do that during our drive. So that was kind of cool to do that. And then I'm getting better at the yelping, but like what we were talking about when we were driving, it takes me like a couple times to get the right, pitch that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get it to where I can just put it on it and just make it right away. So we're getting there.
Because what you're describing there, to kind of give more context to that, I think for me, sometimes like when I go out turkey hunting, I'll listen to what the hens are doing, and I'll count. If a hen's yelping and she starts yelping, and I'll count. Okay, that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, there was 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, there she did 6 times. 1, 2. Okay, there was twice. But I think inherently when you start calling, what a lot of guys do is on a slate call or even a box call, it takes them a little bit to kind of find that rhythm and find that sound.
Yeah.
And so they'll kind of take 3 or 4 swipes at it or scratches on it to find that right noise, right sound and rhythm.
Yeah.
And then they do it another 8 times after that.
Exactly.
Sometimes, and so what ends up happening is you overcall because there are times that you'll hear a turkey just be out there and she'll yelp 27 times in a row.
Won't stop.
10 times in a row, 12 times in a row, 15 times in a row, but not all the time.
Yeah.
And what you've been doing a lot is I'll count, and you're like, the one time I'm like, okay, do a sequence. And you did it, and I counted them, and it was like 11, 13, 8, 14, 10, 12.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Like that was a lot of calling.
Yeah.
And so I feel like what you're trying to, and that's okay to start just to kind of get the hang of it, and you can do it all day long.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, you're kind of getting past that now where you kind of found your rhythm.
Yeah.
But now you have to figure out how to get to that rhythm and tone quicker.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like the big thing that I kept thinking about was like pressure and angle of the striker was like the big thing for me that I'm still kind of trying to.
And then the third thing I would say in there is the shape of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because like I said, when I use a slate call, you'll see my scratches are always, and that's what other thing I told you too. Look down at your scratches, see what the scratches are.
Yep.
You'll see mine are like really small circles.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I'm going louder or faster, my circles get bigger.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's been really, really fun. I'm excited for you.
Yeah. Yeah, because last year.
Sorry, my voice is just all over
good.
the map today.
You're good. Last year, I didn't even really have a slate call that I even really used.
Right.
Like that one hunt where I was the one calling and you were sitting with Jet. I just used my mouth call the entire time. So it's going to be fun to just kind of add something to it and keep learning. So
yeah, absolutely. And like you said, wow, my voice is just really gone. Sorry, guys. No, I'm just kidding. It's not that bad. But yeah, and like you said, a slate call is conducive to the way we turkey hunt. Again, we sit in a lot of blinds. We're trying to archery hunt them in a blind. And so you can kind of get away with that extra movement. Sometimes if you're a gun hunter, some guys have these cool things where they have like their slate call on their knee, you know what I mean? They like you can have it attached to your knee, and then you can have your call right there. But sometimes that's tougher, obviously, because you got a gun and then you're trying to slate call. Yeah. That's where the mouth call comes in really handy.
Right.
It's just be sitting there with a gun and then you just got a mouth call and you're doing your thing. But yeah, it's going to be really, I think it'll be fun for you. And like I said, we talked about that as we were driving. You're just like, I think for this season, your foundation is really is based around the yelping.
Yeah, exactly.
Based around the yelping, based around purring at times, you know what I mean? And then just kind of go from there.
Yeah.
You know, and then obviously just really mimicking whatever the turkey's doing.
Yeah, yeah.
But we could probably do a pod about turkey calling.
Oh, yeah,
that might be kind of scratchy to listen to.
Yeah,
I'd be turning the volume up and down a lot. But
warning headphone users.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's gonna be really exciting for you. And like I said, that Garrett, he made some good calls.
Yeah, super nice guy too.
Yep. And really you had him sign the back of it.
Yeah.
And you haven't put the date on there.
Put the date. Yep. I told Alec, one of the guys that we were working with, he goes, I told him, I said, I just want this to like show my grandkids, like, yeah, I got this back in 25. You know?
Oh, yeah. On that years and years ago, I had a slate call that I just loved. It was a Primo slate call. It was a glass. I don't remember, Power Crystal or something it was called. And I loved it. Man, it was a good call. I had it for a long time and just really, really liked it. And I don't know how it happened. It broke.
Really?
Yeah, the glass cracked. I was like, oh.
That sucks.
And that was that.
Yeah.
And then, you can't do anything then.
Right.
Obviously, because it just doesn't resonate. It doesn't make any noise. You know what I mean? Or like it's supposed to. It just sounded like a broken banjo string. You know what I mean? Like, bring. You know, it just like sounded off. Yeah. I'm like, God darn it.
Well, I suppose we should say too, it's that call that I ended up getting, it's glass, but then also slate on the back.
Yeah, it's like a double-sided, so it's got the glass on the top, and then on the bottom it's got a small section in the middle. That's a little slate, and you'll see calls like that. It's pretty cool. So you can really, really putt and purr with the slate, but then you can really get on it with the glass.
Yeah,
and it can also, the nice thing too is you can sound like kind of multiple birds.
Right.
The cool thing too about the ones that, and this might have just been his show special, I'm not sure, but it came with 2 strikers.
Yeah,
his. One of his little kind of shticks too is that he had these waterproof strikers, so you could or there was like the waterproof call too, right?
Yeah, they were both waterproof.
Yeah, so you could you'll see a lot of guys in there like put it underwater, but the waterproof striker you could get it wet and then call on it and it would still
sound just fine.
Yeah, it sounds just fine.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool to have too.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple of those. I don't use them all the time or very often. Again, being in a ground blind, we kind of luck out.
Yeah.
But there are days where all of a sudden you're like not paying attention, you drop it on the ground, and then it's like, and it's a wet day, and you're like, awesome, that's soaked. You know, well, here we go.
Yeah.
Like I've told you before, I've kind of gotten to the point now where I really get interested in different strikers.
Yeah.
There was a guy years ago, I don't even know where we were at. I think it was Indiana. Remember that little hat that Jet has that's got the turkey on it?
Yeah.
That camo hat?
Yeah.
He was a really, really old guy. And I walked up and he was selling turkey calls and I picked one up and I started playing it. And he was like, said something like, he said something like, yeah, you don't look like you're in the market for a turkey call. Slate call. You look like you're in the market for strikers. And it was funny because I kept picking up all these strikers and I joked to him. I was like, well, I do have my favorite slate calls. I probably would be more interested in buying a couple strikers. So then he went through this whole thing about all these strikers and woods and all this stuff that he had. It was really kind of neat.
Yeah,
And I ended up buying a couple strikers from him.
That's awesome.
And I still have them. I still use them.
Yeah, you have a couple that are really cool detail to them, like on the handle of the striker.
Yeah.
And then it's got like the turkey print on the end of it.
Uh-huh.
I just remember like one of the first times I went with you, I was taking some pictures of it and they just turned out so sweet.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Well, and I think the fun thing too is sometimes like some of my favorite strikers, you can, like when I first got them, they were like super clean, you know, they're like perfect condition, but you can see them now, they get a little dirt and mud on them and they get dirty. Your hands are dirty. And I kind of like that too.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. I don't know why I was telling you to do that, but like, if I could go back on turkey hunting to when I first started, I would have dated stuff more.
Yeah.
I would have like, even on a striker, been like 2022 or 1998 or whatever, you know what I mean? Like I would have, I don't think I was deer hunting in 98, or turkey in 98, but no, I probably was. Anyway, but Yeah, I wish I would have dated stuff.
Yeah.
Because then it would just been cool. Like, oh, wow, I've been using this for 15 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's kind of neat.
Yeah, that's my goal with that one that I just got. Be sweet.
Well, that's even like right now. Right now, as we speak, when this episode is being recorded, by the time this episode airs, it will have been over. But NWTF, the National Wildlife Turkey Federation banquet, their convention down in Nashville is happening right now.
Yep.
And that's a big, big show. We've actually done that show before. It's done really well for us.
Yeah.
You know, I think at first people are like, oh, you're going to a turkey show? Turkey hunters or deer hunters?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I think the other thing that's nice about the NWTF is we you really catch the southern crowd. There's a ton of people from Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Carolinas that come up for that show. You know, Memphis, all that area. And guys come down too from the north too, but it's kind of like the perfect in between.
Right.
And Nashville's a fun place. I think guys, they kind of use it as an excuse as well. You know, you go and then
go to Nashville.
People love the music and going and hearing all that stuff too. So it kind of works out both ways.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, that's going on right now. And I'll tell you what, for a lot of places around the country, southern and on the south, turkey hunting is not very far away.
Yeah, it's coming, man.
It's right around the corner.
Yep,
it's right around the corner. All right. Well, I say we wrap it up.
Yeah.
Well, like you said, to go back on what I said earlier, again, just food for thought. Like you said, I think conservation is really, really important. I think it's how that this all, becomes sustainable, right? Because we as hunters inherently kill stuff. If we're not careful, we kill too much.
Yep.
Right? We've seen it happen in our country. We've talked about on the podcast. We've talked about buffalo. We've talked about all these different animals that just aren't here or are here in such small quantities compared to the way it used to be. And so back then there wasn't any conservation or very little. That was the start of it. And the reality is we're still in conservation now. We're still within this journey of trying to find our way.
Right.
And I think there's all of it's important. We just have to figure out the balance.
Yeah.
And so take it for what it's worth.
Yeah, exactly.
But and like you said, check out those Garrett Ridge turkey calls.
They're awesome.
That is a shameless plug, but whatever, they're really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the guy was super cool. Really, really fun to talk to. I think he's going to be at the Ohio show.
Yeah,
Ohio Sportsman's Open Season Sportsman's Expo. I think he said he was going to be there because he's from Ohio.
Yeah.
So, but if you're in the market for another call, check him out. I'm sure he's got a website.
Yeah, he does.
He's got a really cool Instagram page. There's really cool stuff like showing the process of making them.
Well, I was actually going to go buy another one for my buddy, and it was, or I can't remember how it went, but basically he was like, "Yeah, I'm out."
Oh, really?
Yeah, but he's like, I'm going to have more. I'm going to be making them all this week right now.
Oh, that's awesome.
And they'll be up on his website by the weekend. So.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really good bro gift.
Yeah.
Good bro gift is a nice slate call.
Yep, exactly.
Can't go wrong. Oh, just hit Mike. All right. Ozonics Killerwinds podcast. Thanks for listening. Stay classy.
See you next week.
Stay classy.